Well, here we are at the front of the grid at Snetterton for the first race, and it looks to me like World Rally Squad M Sport are really getting to grips with this GT racing. As you can see, Rembert Berg is the man behind the wheel. Let's see how long he can keep the lead.
A rolling start in round 5 of the Avon Tyres British GT Championship. First ever pole position for M Sport, the British GT Audi in wet qualifying, and a strong session for Steve Tandy in the BMW alongside. The pace begins to build, the red lights are on, and we're about to go racing here at Snetterton. The huge field of cars gets themselves underway, all looking very tightly bunched as they head up into the first right-hander at Ritchie's Corner. Onto the brakes, they turn their way in towards the right-hander, and Lee Mole goes all over the grass. There's a Aston Martin in the middle of the field that is collected by Gregor Fiskin's Porsche, flies into the air. So damage at the first corner, up towards the Montreal hairpin for the first time, and very late on the brakes, running wide, goes the number 32 Porsche of David Ashburn, loses a couple of places, and look at the damage to the tail end of that Barwell Aston Martin driven by Mark Poole. Good battle going on for third position though. The Aston Martin of Andrew Howard being hassled all of the time by that Porsche, the Demon Twigs Porsche in the hands of John Minshaw. Onto the brakes, they turn their way through the left-hander at Agostini. Ahmed El Harthi, the white and light blue Porsche, sits directly behind as well. Huge field of GT cars thread their way around the Snetterton 300 circuit as we ride on board with Mark Patterson. Onto the brakes, they turn their way through the left-hander at Hamilton. Phil Driver as Aston Martin sitting ahead. You can see how closely bunched the field are still, as they then turn their way round through Williams and onto the Bentley straight for the first time. You can see the damage to the front end of Gregor Fiskin's Porsche, damage to the tail end as well. He's still limping the car round. A replay of the start, you can see just how tight it is. We ride on board Gary Eastwood's Ferrari 458 Italia, and as they turn in towards Ritchie's Corner, contact is made. The Aston Martin of Mark Poole gets sideways, and that, of course, brought about the subsequent collisions. You can see the number 8 BMW taken to the grass and Gregor Fiskin's Porsche raised into the air. So Mark Poole safely out of his Aston Martin, and another car involved as well. That's the Ginetta of Richard Sykes. The BMW Z4 of the Johnsons is now holding up the battle for second place in GT4, being headed by the Ginetta of James May. The rest of the field charging their way over the start-finish line, and this time Andrew Howard is running right the way alongside the 888 Optimum Racing BMW Z4, looking to try and thread a way through, and as he does that, he allows up the inside number 33. Squeezing his way through goes the track speed Porsche of John Minshaw. No second opportunity needed for John Minshaw, and now that Beechdene Aston Martin 007 having to from Ahmed El Harthi, who's sitting directly behind, sharing the car with Michael Caine, the champion from last year. Ahmed El Harthi jinxed one way, then jinxed the other. And up towards Ritchie's Corner comes the BMW Z4 of the Johnsons, recovering from a slow start, going past the GT4 leader, number 44, Rick Parfitt Jr. We ride on board in the GT4 Aston Martin, Steve Chaplin, trying to hunt down the car ahead of him. That's the yellow and silver Ginetta G50 in the hands of James May, currently lying second in the GT4 class. Out of the Montreal hairpin, up towards the left-hander at Palmer, diving up the inside, just about avoiding contact. The door was closed, fairly, I have to say, by James May. And then they thread their way down the straight and up towards the braking area for the left-hander at Agostini. Here they come on the brakes, Steve Chaplin having another look up the inside, and this time he's managed to squeeze his way through. James May down to third in the GT4 class. The next of the cars, which is that white and red Ginetta, is Zoe Wenham. She's very close as well, isn't she, to the tail end of the car that's just lost second place in the class. Round through Hamilton, up towards Oggies, and James May this time looking to try and thrust his way back ahead of the Aston Martin, trying to regain the place that he's just lost. Steve Chaplin runs wide and allows James May to get out the inside again. A little bit of contact between the two of them, that pushes Steve Chaplin wide. Further contact between Steve Chaplin and number 43, that's Zoe Wenham, all rather robust. A great battle for 7th through to 10th also in GT3, being headed by the Mercedes of Jason Minshaw. Gregoire de Moussier not overly far behind. Race leaders over the start-finish line, and there's spin in the background for the Ferrari. That's Derek Johnston. He spun the Ferrari 458, and as he's doing that, it looks as though Steve Tandy is having to defend here from the Porsche. Number 33, John Minshaw, trying to squeeze up the inside. The door is closed, and therefore the BMW Z4 still remains in second. Now John Minshaw, however, is under pressure from the Beechdene Aston Martin, the blue and white machine 007 in the hands of Andrew Howard. Up towards Ritchie's corner, car number 41, the recovering Derek Johnston, fresh from his spin, lost a few places. He's now down into 14th position as we ride on board with Mark Patterson at the wheel of the United Autosports Audi R8 directly behind. Their way through Montreal, and then will accelerate their way back up towards the left-hander at Palmer. Derek Johnston trying to keep the Ferrari as neat and tidy as he possibly can to prevent Mark Patterson, the American driver, squeezing his way through. And here we see a replay of the spin for Derek Johnston, just losing the tail end of the Ferrari, heading in towards Murray's. A spin through 180 degrees onto the grass and losing a couple of places. Rembert Berg, though, car number 10, the M Sport Audi R8, still continuing to lead the race, despite the fact that not only far behind is both that black BMW of Steve Tandy, then the next of the Porsches, which is the number 33 car in the hands of John Minshaw, as we ride back on board with Mark Patterson once more, looking to try and squeeze his way through and ahead of Derek Johnston. Again, good driving by the man from Nottingham, former motorcycle racer Derek Johnston, keeping behind the American. Great racing here at Snetterton. Rejoin us in a moment. You rejoin us with Rembert Berg still leading the race, the M Sport Audi. Of course, M Sport, a team that's owned by Malcolm Wilson, former World Rally champions with Ford a season or so ago. The Beechstein Aston Martin of Andrew Howard has a look up the inside and squeezes his way through ahead of John Minshaw as they head round through Ritchie's corner. So up into third position now for the Aston Martin, down to fourth for the Porsche that tries to fight back almost immediately. Neat and tidy, however, through the Montreal hairpin from Andrew Howard. And of course, all of this squabbling now for third, fourth and fifth might just allow the front two to pull away. Black BMW there of Steve Tandy remaining in second position. That is car number 1, Ahmed El Harthy, still behind the wheel of the Porsche. He sits there in fifth position, and a great battle going on in the background for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, probably even down to 12th position. Gary Eastwood's Ferrari under pressure from the Mercedes that sits directly behind. That's number 14, Jason Minshaw, and Gregoire de Moustier is directly behind him. Back to GT4, car number 69 still in the hands of James, lying second in the class and still being hounded by the GT4 Aston Martin of number 53, Steve Chaplin. We ride on board as they turn their way through Montreal. Accelerating their way out of the right-hand hairpin and back up towards the braking area for Palmer. We saw Steve Chaplin a few laps ago have a look on the brakes heading round through the left-hander at Palmer. Opts to sit behind the Ginetta G50 this time, and it might just give him the opportunity to try and squeeze his way up the inside as they head into the brakes at Agostini. James May's got it covered, albeit Steve Chaplin is still intent on squeezing his way through. Back through he goes, back into second in the GT4 class, with James May trying to fight back instantly as they head up towards Hamilton. Back with the race leaders. Car number 888, Steve Tandy, at the wheel of the Optimum Racing BMW Z4, still remaining there in second place, but you can see just how tight it is. These front 5 cars all absolutely together as they come over the start-finish line, just proving that the regulations in the Avon Towers British GT Championship are certainly working in terms of performance equalisation. Through the right-hander at Ritchie's they go. Andrew Howard having had a quick look at trying to squeeze his way through. Further down through the order, John Dillon also has his hands full. The red Ferrari, number 13, with the Italian tricolour right the way down the centre, having to defend from the other Ferrari 458 in the hands of Derek Johnston. Running wide at the Montreal hairpin goes the number 14 car of Jason Minshaw. That's allowed Gregoire de Moustier's black and orange McLaren to feed its way through. We ride on board once more with Mark Patterson. This is the battle for 13th position. The car ahead of him is John Dillon. The next of the cars that's ahead of that is Derek Johnston. And we also still have this very tight battle for second in the GT4 class. The number 53 Aston Martin of Steve Chaplin still continually being hounded by that silver and yellow Ginetta G50 in the hands of the very rapid number 69 James May as he turns his way through Ritchie's corner. Down the Bentley straight, and this time Andrew Howard's got a run on Steve Tandy's BMW Z4, squeezes his way through up to second position in the race. The black BMW down to third, and in fourth place it looks as though Ahmed El Harthy is trying to squeeze his Porsche ahead of the track speed car. No avail, however. The doors closed by John Minshaw, and therefore the man from Oman still remains in fifth. Round through the sweeping right-hander at Coram, onto the brakes at Murray's they'll go. These front 5 cars, despite the fact they're squabbling, aren't particularly slowing each other up and allowing the car in 6th place to claw its way up onto the coattails. Through and over the start-finish line they go once more. The M Sport Audi R8 of Rembert Berg still leading, but now that Andrew Howard is up into second, you can see the pressure is beginning to build. As side-by-side through Richie's corner goes the BMW of Steve Tandy. Right the way with him is John Minshaw, and John Minshaw now has the inside line as they head onto the brakes, round through the right-hander at Montreal. The BMW is going to lose one place. It's in danger of losing two, because the blue and white Porsche, number one in the hands of Ahmed El Hardy, is now running side-by-side, albeit on the outside as they head round through Palmer, and has managed to do it round the outside, taking fourth place away. So in the matter of one lap, from second down to fifth for the black BMW. Rembert Berg still continuing to lead. Andrew Howard there in second place. Minshaw, Al Harvey, Tandy and Gary Eastwood sits there in sixth position, but he's coming under pressure now from Gregoire de Moustier, who's broken away from the pack behind. So the battle is certainly on for sixth and seventh as they accelerate their way up towards the left-hander at Hamilton. There's the number 33 track-speed Porsche of John Minshaw. Gets a little bit sideways midway through the corner, tiny bit of oversteer, perhaps the rear tyres just being worked a little bit too hard in the early stages of the race. Wouldn't surprise me, such has been the battle at the front. It's been rather intense, and then we get that great battle between number 18, the Ferrari 458 Italia of Gary Eastwood, who now is under a raft of pressure from Gregoire de Moustier, the McLaren, sitting directly in the Avon wheel tracks of the Ferrari as they thrust their way down the Bentley Straight and up towards Brundle and Nelson. You can also see just how close it's now got towards the front as well, because Rembert Berg is under pressure from Andrew Howard, and Gregoire de Moustier has made it stick. He's now up inside the top six for the first time. The Ferrari of Gary Eastwood down to seventh. And all of the time, the pressure is building for the Audi R8. Number 10 in the hands of Rembert Berg. Andrew Howard is very keen indeed to try and thrust his way through into the lead of the race, and he's managed to do so up the inside at Murray's corner. Martin takes the lead. We ride on board with erstwhile race leader just having lost the position. Down the centre straight they go. Top speed of these cars is going to be almost 160 miles per hour as they head at the fastest points of the circuit. And as they turn their way through Richie's corner, we can have a look at the replay of how Rembert Berg lost the lead of the race. You can see Andrew Howard's car in the mirrors diving its way up the inside. Rembert Berg thought for a split second about turning in, but then decided it was better to avoid the collision. Still leading the GT4 class is the number 44 Ginetta G50 of Rick Parfitt Jr. And there's another Ginetta that still lies third in that class as well, number 69 in the hands of James May. Steve Chaplin's Aston Martin occupying second. And this is the battle for second position, because of course it's Andrew Howard in the Aston Martin that leads. Rembert Berg, the Audi, now being hounded by the two Porsches, first of which is the number 33 track speed car of John Minshaw. He's got directly behind him Ahmed El Harvey at the wheel of the Motorbase car, and then right behind those two is Steve Tandy. You can also see the McLaren, the black, orange and white car of Gregoire de Moustier is beginning to close up as well. So we've got four fighting for second. It may well be a quintet before too much longer, because number 9, heading through shot there, is catching. The battle is also on still. Gary Eastwood with his hands rather full. The sole Fortec Mercedes, number 14, in the hands of Jason Minshaw, is still hot on the heels of the Ferrari ahead, but equally as much he wants to attack, he's got to defend as well, as diving up the inside the two McLarens go side by side, and squeezing his way through goes Jody Firth, number 24, ahead of the Pressy Spark McLaren that's in the hands of the former champions. David Jones that's behind the wheel. Round through Palmer they'll go. There goes number 22, David Jones, just having lost the position. He'll be very keen indeed not to lose a further one, because he's got another one of the track speed Porsches, number 31, David Ashburn, sitting right behind him as Jason Minshaw thought about diving up the inside of Gary Eastwood there to try and take the place away. But it's still this huge train of cars headed by the Ferrari, then the Mercedes, then the two McLarens, and then the Porsche thereafter, such is the variety we have in the Avon Tires British GT Championship. Round through the right-hander at Oggies, and number 14, Jason Minshaw, almost being pushed round the corner there by the United Autosports McLaren in the hands of Jody Firth. Having gained one place, he's rather keen, the Yorkshireman, to try and gain another. They accelerate their way down the Bentley Straight. You can see Jody Firth just how much he's pushing on all over the curbs on the exit. There goes our leader of the GT4 class, which is Rick Parfitt Jr. He'll hand the car over to Ryan Ratcliffe a little bit later on. That pairing looking for their first class win of the season. And here is another battle that we still have. Number 13, John Dillon's Ferrari 458, still being hounded by the number 6 Aston Martin of Phil Dryborough. Round through towards the conclusion of another lap. Back markers in the way this time for Rembert Berg. And for Matt Smith, well, he didn't intentionally get in the way, but he's bunched the top three up yet further. And that's also allowed, I think, Steve Tandy's black BMW to become ever closer as he sits there in what is 5th position. Down the straight they'll go. Andrew Howard still leading the race, having just gone through shot. He's continually pulling away now all of the time as this 5-car train for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th all battle, they all slow each other up, and look at the fight that we've got for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th position. It's still Gary Eastwood's Ferrari being hounded all of the time by Jason Minshaw, brother of John Minshaw, who currently lies 3rd in the race. Gary Eastwood under pressure now from Jason Minshaw. Jason Minshaw needs to close the door because Jody Firth almost squeezed his way through at the wheel of that number 24 white and red McLaren. And you can now see just how far the Aston Martin of Andrew Howard has started to pull away from this quintet of cars. They turn their way round through Agostini. Gary Eastwood's Ferrari with its lights ablaze. He's got back markers to deal with before too much longer, as this time trying round the outside at Agostini. That would be a brave move for number 14, Jason Minshaw. Thought hard about it. Now gets the Mercedes SLS back behind the Ferrari. In towards the left-hander at Hamilton they'll go, and all of this squabbling allowing the rest of the cars all to close up behind. You see just how much number 14 is pushing on Jason Minshaw. Again, he just runs out a little bit wide going round through Oggies, and again that's allowed Jody Firth to try and squeeze his way through at the inside. Inside line at Oggies gives him the inside line at Williams, and therefore, as they head on to the Bentley straight, it's another position gain for the Yorkshireman. Down the straight they'll go. Past the back marker, that being Matt Smith's Ginetta G50 running in the GT4 class. He moves neatly out of the way. Jason Minshaw needs to be careful here not to lose another place, because he's got the Jones-driven number 22 Pressy Spark McLaren sitting right behind David Jones behind the wheel. A great rumble from that Mercedes SLS as it turns its way through the bomb hole, and will then accelerate its way up towards a sweeping right-hander at Coram that brings them through towards the conclusion of the lap. Over the start-finish line goes our race leader. Then that quintet of cars fighting for second right the way through to 6th place, still being headed by the Audi R8 of Rembert Berg. Round through Richie's corners they'll go. Rembert Berg sitting there in 2nd place. Then the 2 Porsches behind. That's number 1, Ahmed El Harthi. He'll hand the car over to the champion from last year, Michael Caine, as we ride back on board on the Ferrari with Gary Eastwood. He sits there in 7th with this train of cars behind him. Number 41 further down through the order, Derek Johnston, still making progress after his spins earlier on. He's just carved his way through and ahead of the track speed Porsche, number 31 of David Ashburn. Out of the Montreal hairpin, back down the short straight in towards the left-hander at Palmer once more, onto the brakes. They turn their way in, and Jody Firth, who's gained a couple of places over the last couple of laps, is now looking to try and steal 7th place away from the Ferrari that sits ahead of him of Gary Eastwood. Here they come. Jody Firth diving up the inside, comes from a very long way back, squeezes his way through. A great manoeuvre from Jody Firth. Up to 7th place he goes. And now, well, he'll have to try and consolidate that, because the rest of the field are a long, long way up the road. There's still traffic to be dealt with, though, by the drivers towards the sharp end of the field as they turn their way onto the Bentley straight. A couple of Porsches now have got away from the black BMW of Steve Tandy. Look in the background, because Zoe Wenham's Ginetta is in the way. Steve Tandy wants to squeeze his way through. There's also the McLaren of Gregoire de Moustier who's looking to squeeze through as well, and he's gained another position. Up through the order comes Gregoire de Moustier, another position gained for the unfortunate Steve Tandy, who was running in 2nd not many laps ago. He's now number 888, down in 6th position. Round 5 of the British GT Championship here at Snetterton, and Andrew Howard, the Aston Martin, the Beechstein car, still continues to lead from this great battle that's still going on for 2nd, 3rd and 4th position. There's number 9, Gregoire de Moustier. He sits there in 5th place. And further down through the order, we've still got some titanic fights going on. The pit window very shortly will be open, and this is one of the fights that continues to rage for 7th position. Gary Eastwood's Ferrari up towards Richie's corner, and trying to go round the outside of him is the Mercedes SLS, managing to do so. Number 14, Jason Minshaw, gains the place. Up to 7th he goes. Gary Eastwood, who we ride on board with, is down to 8th and in danger of dropping to 9th, because the next of the cars is the David Jones-driven silver McLaren. Sits directly behind as they work their way out of Montreal and head back up towards the left-hander at Palmer once more. Through the left-hander they'll go. Number 22, David Jones, still looking to try and both attack and defend at the... Has almost drawn himself alongside Gary Eastwood's Ferrari here as the 2 head up towards Agostini. David Jones has managed to squeeze his way through, so the silver-grey McLaren goes through. We're right on board with Gary Eastwood, who's now lost a couple of places over the matter of the same number of laps. Battle for 4th position still continues to rage as well. The white and blue Porsche in the hands of Ahmed El Harthi, now under pressure from Gregoire de Moustier's McLaren as the race leader flashes his lights. that being Andrew Howard at the wheel of the Beechdene Aston Martin, about to come through and lap the car that currently lies second in the GT4 class, the Steve Chaplin-driven Aston Martin. Well, the pit window is now open as well, and therefore it won't be that much longer before we surely start to see some of these cars dive into the pit lane and hand the cars over to their co-drivers. There goes the GT4 class leader, Rick Parfitt Jr. behind the wheel. He's led the class for the vast majority of the way, and Ryan Ratcliffe will very soon be taking over that Ginetta G50. As Gary Eastwood, number 18, comes under pressure from another Ferrari 458 Italia. That's Derek Johnston. He's got the Porsche of David Ashburn, number 31, sitting directly behind, and they all peel their way off and into the pit. So we said the pit window is open. Well, the first of the front runners now opting to dive into the pit lane, not least of which is car number 888, which is Steve Tandy. Out of the car, he is hoisted, and therefore into the car will jump Dan Brown. We've also got Gary Eastwood coming in. He vacates the number 18 at FF Corsa Ferrari. Rob Barth will therefore take over the driving duties for the remainder of the race. However, the rest of the front-running cars have all remained out there as they turn their way through Agostini. Andrew Howard's Aston Martin still leads, albeit it looks as though he's been caught a little bit over the last few laps or so from Rembert Berg's Audi R8, then the two Porsches. John Minshaw still with Ahmed El Harthy's white and blue car, not overly far behind. The two of those not quite nose to tail, half a Porsche length between the two of them, as being pushed backwards in the pit lane, about to rejoin the race. The 888 Optimum Racing car now with Dan Brown behind the wheel. Number 43, which is the Zoe Wenham-driven Ginetta G50, not going as well as in previous races, currently lying fourth in the GT4 class. The cars that had pitted now making their way back out onto the circuit, not least of which is the Audi R8 heading towards us now. That's Matt Bell that's behind the wheel, and the other of the 888 Optimum Racing cars dives for the pit lane. Lee Mole jumps out of the car. Of course, he had the wild ride through at turn one. Joe Osborne getting behind the wheel as the squabble for the lead of the race is now all heading its way down the pit lane. So Andrew Howard, who's got a slightly longer pit stop to do as a result of where they finished at Silverstone, that Aston Martin will have to remain stationary for an extra 15 seconds. He's heading down the pit lane. We've also seen the car that's running second in GT4 coming down as well, the Aston Martin, in the hands of Steve Chaplin. So Rembert Berg, number 10, out of the car. Warren Hughes about to take over the M Sport Audi R8. You can also see the car alongside, which is the Motorbase Porsche. Ahmed El Harthy having dispensed with driving duties. Michael Caine, the champion from last year, being strapped in. Car number 13, John Dillon, continues round, not as yet having handed the car over to his co-driver, that being Aaron Scott. And we can see that Ahmed El Harthy has just about now got Michael Caine strapped into the number 1 Motorbase Porsche. The door about to close, the Porsche about to fire its way back into life. There is the Beechdene Aston Martin. Andrew Howard having jumped out of the car. It's Johnny Adams that's behind the wheel. But of course everybody else is able to get out of the pits slightly quicker. That Aston has got an extra pit stop penalty as a result of where it finished at Silverstone. And in reality this will be the lead battle by the time we've concluded all of the pit stops. You'll notice also that the Porsche, now driven by Michael Caine, has leapfrogged the Audi. The M Sport Audi with Warren Hughes behind the wheel has lost a position in the pits. All over the grass goes the APO Sports Ginetta, rejoining the circuit. They're currently lying third in the GT4 class as the squabble between the Porsches, the Audis and the Von Ryan McLaren turn their way out of Agostini. The Von Ryan McLaren going better than it has done all season. It's now in the hands of the British driver Duncan Tappy. Round through Palmer they'll go. You can see that Michael Caine at the wheel of the Motorbase number 1 white and blue Porsche has now started to pull away from this little trio, and Andy in the pits has found the other driver of the car, Ahmed El Harthy.
It was looking very comfortable for you out there. Did you enjoy that?
A very good few laps. We stayed out of trouble in the first 2 to 3 laps and then started pushing on as we had the pace. It's just that it's so hard to overtake around here, and I had to get the car back in best condition for Michael to do a good job. But overall, yeah, I think it was a very good moving from 8th to 4th on track was great, and now we just need to push as much as we can.
So the last of the front runners makes his way into the pit lane. This is Jody Firth giving way to the 2011 champion Glyn Geddy. Won the championship with his father Jim back in 2011. So the United Autosports McLaren sits in the pits, and therefore this is the battle for second and third position, with Phil Keane, number 33, able to squeeze his way through and ahead of the M Sport Audi. We ride on board with Warren Hughes. Has to sit right behind the track speed Porsche as he turns his way through the bomb hole, then up towards Coram. So it's a Porsche 1-2 at this stage. The Audi sitting there in third position that we ride on board with. And as they turn their way through the never-ending right-hander at Coram, they're onto the brakes and will flick left at Murray's. Michael Caine, number 1, leads the race. The Porsche of Phil Keane, though, having just taken second place away, is now looking to try and hoist himself through and into the lead here. Over the start-finish line they'll go. Porsche from Porsche, pulling away all of the time from the M Sport Audi. Also coming back out of the pit lane is the GT4 leader at the same time, that being Ryan Ratcliffe now. Side by side through Ritchie's corner. Phil Keane on the outside line going round through Ritchie's. That still gives Michael Caine the inside line as they get to the braking area for Montreal. Neat and tidily through the right-hander goes Michael Caine, making sure he clips the apex. And therefore, for Phil Keane, albeit at the moment, he still has to settle for second. Onto the brakes. Through the left-hander at Palmer, and well, Michael Caine is going to know that he's under pressure here because Phil Keane is a very, very rapid young man. Michael Caine is no slouch, but Phil Keane, the body language of the car, would tell you that he's keen to take the lead. Onto the brakes, round through the right-hander at Agostini. Of course, whilst these two are battling, it's just allowing Warren Hughes, who had briefly fallen away at the wheel of the Audi, to begin to close back up. And we've also got the McLaren of Duncan Tappy in the Von Ryan racing team that sits there in 4th. Up towards Oggies once more, still a Porsche once time. Michael Caine runs a little bit wide coming out of Oggies' corner. That allows Phil Keane very quickly to bounce. Takes the lead of the race. So the track speed number 33 Porsche in the hands of Phil Keane was driven in earlier on in the race by John Minshaw. Goes through and takes the lead. White and blue Porsche of Michael Caine down into second. And well, still not overly far behind is where we see the Audi of Warren Hughes in 3rd place. And then at orange and black, McLaren of Duncan Tappy that sits there in 4th. Andy has found Andrew Howard, former race leader, in the pit lane.
Andrew, that was really exciting. At the very start, I thought you were going to get squeezed out of it, but you came out triumphant.
Yeah, no, it was... you go when the lights go out, so it's not like the safety car. At the beginning of the race, the moment the lights go, you race. So I either had to get in front of the other Aston or behind. So I got a good run, so I went in front, and to be fair, you know, it was clean. And then it was just a question of getting into the channel. Then the car's immense. I mean, the car is a proper racing car today. It's just great. You can take people on the brakes, and you know, it's cool.
A drive-through penalty for Declan Jones. That is going to harm our GT4 Championship leaders.
Zoe, I'm guessing that's not sight for joyful eyes then?
Not at all. We've had what can only be described as a miserable race so far. My stint was doing okay, reeling in second and third, you know, need to pounce. The Aston went wide on the grass just before Williams, and I absolutely pounced up the inside for him to completely sideswipe me and ruin my stint at the race, really. We've got tracking issues, and then we were told we had a pit stop quarter of a second too short, which has just destroyed everything.
Quarter of a second?
A quarter of a second, but they've got to do and be consistent, haven't they? So I guess it's what we deserved.
Some might say that's a bit harsh, but those are the rules. And as the field turns its way, the battle for 7th place, round through Ritchie's corner, Dan Brown in the 888 racing BMW is under pressure now from Benji Hetherington's Mercedes behind. Here they come, up towards Montreal, and behind, Matt Bell accosts Rob Barth, almost barges the Ferrari out of the way. Now Rob Barth is in danger of losing place from the number 31 track speed Porsche in the hands of Nick Tandy. A quick lock on board as we ride with Matt Bell very late up the inside. Rob Barth already committed to the corner, and well, contact was made. Could have been worse. We still continue to ride on board with Matt Bell, and he now is looking to try and gain another place. Benji Hetherington directly ahead of us. The Mercedes SLS gets a little bit sideways coming out the corner as Benji tries to apply the throttle as neatly as he possibly can. Also keep an eye on the spotty Porsche, number 31, that's directly behind Matt Bell, who we ride on board with now. That is Nick Tandy. Matt Bell looking to try and draw himself alongside Benji Hetherington. The Mercedes has a bit more legs in a straight line, and look, Nick Tandy is going to go past both of them down the Bentley straight. We ride on board with Matt Bell, and Nick Tandy has squeezed his way through and ahead not just of Matt Bell, but also number 14, Benji Hetherington. 2 places in one on the Bentley straight. For Nick Tandy, that is impressive. Benji Hetherington misses the apex also at the bomb hole, and that now has allowed Matt Bell's Audi R8, the United Autosport car, to squeeze its way through. We ride on board with Matt Bell again once more. You can see the Mercedes has the extra straight line speed, but Nick Tandy, sitting in the slipstream of 2 cars, positioning himself beautifully to squeeze up the inside on the way into Brundle and then take the apex for Nelson. Out of Nelson now come, and then with Benji Hetherington missing the apex on the way in towards the right-hander, Matt Bell in the United Autosports Audi is able to squeeze his way through. That looks as though it is Jake Rattenbury that's pulled the car off to the side of the circuit. The number 41 M-Tech Ferrari clearly having a problem. And now, as we look back at the battle, Nick Tandy looking to try and squeeze his way through and ahead of Dan Brown. Another position gained for the Porsche. Dan Brown running wide. It's another position gained also for number 25 in the hands of Matt Bell. Well, Matt Bell and Mark Patterson were third in the championship coming into this weekend, and they're having a good drive here, whilst the 888 BMW Z4 continues to go backwards. Our race leader, though, is number 33, Phil Keane. So with our GT4 class leader, which is Ryan Ratcliffe, sharing the car with Rick Parfitt Jr., a long way ahead in the class, looking for their elusive first class win of the season in 2013, turning their way round through Ritchie's corner. Can't quite afford to cruise towards the start-finish line, but they've built up a substantive lead. Our race leader, however, heading through shot there, number 33, Phil Keane. This is Michael Caine, car number 1, the second of the two Porsches, lying second in the field, and then Warren Hughes. Further down through the order, Johnny Adam at the wheel of the Beechdene Aston Martin. He's got his hands rather full, hasn't he? Directly behind him is the very quick and rapid number 31, Nick Tandy, looking to try and gain a further place. Over the start-finish line now come. Johnny Adam under pressure. The Porsche sits behind. And as they charge up the start-finish straight, turn their way in towards the right-hander at Ritchie's corner, Glyn Geddy, Johnny Adam and Nick Tandy for 5th, 6th and 7th, are all as one as they head out of the corner and up towards the brachial once more for the right-hander at Montreal. Through the right-hander they'll go, and with Nick Tandy looking to try and get himself onto the coattails of the Aston Martin, gets much better drive coming out of the corner. Johnny Adam may go a little bit defensive on the way towards Palmer, but Nick Tandy decides for him, dives up the inside, squeezes his way through. Another position gained for Nick Tandy. He is now up into 6th position and really has been charging since he took over the car from the 2010 champion David Ashburn. Through Agostini they'll go. The next of the cars that is very much in sight for that spotty Porsche of Nick Tandy is the United Autosports McLaren of the 2011 champion Glyn Geddy ahead. Through Hamilton, up towards the braking area for the right-hander at Oggies. We've seen a few cars run wide at Oggies corner, but for Glyn Geddy, keeping it all nice and neat and tidy. Further down through the order, Godfrey Jones runs a little bit wide at the wheel of the silver grey number 22 McLaren and allows Aaron Scott's Ferrari 458 to squeeze its way through. And all of the time, our overall race leader, number 33, Phil Keane, having taken over the car from John Minshaw during that pit stop window, are about to head over the chalk another lap up into the book, with that substantive lead now built between themselves and the car that remains in second. Further down through the order, Glyn Geddy still coming under this pressure from Nick Tandy. There's a back marker ahead of them as well. That's the car that's now driven by Tom Wilson, the car that currently runs second in the GT4 class, the Aston Martin, number 53. Tom Wilson wasn't really able to get out of the way, but as they head onto the straights, Glyn Geddy is able to scythe his way through. There goes Nick Tandy, there goes Johnny Adam. And well, for the GT4 drivers, they've got to keep their eyes in their mirrors as Nick Tandy has a look at the inside of Glyn Geddy, heading in towards Ritchie's corner, goes through, takes 5th place away. Geddy runs wide. That allows the Aston Martin of Johnny Adam also to squeeze his way through. So 2 places lost there by the United Autosports McLaren in the one single corner. They're all bunching up behind as well, because number 25, Matt Bell, is now right behind Glyn Geddy. Adding to that, the fact that the black BMW of Dan Brown is not overly far away. You've also got Benji Hetherington's Mercedes. Fabulous battle as this train of almost 6 cars turns its way round through Palmer. Down the straight they'll go, in towards the braking area for Agostini once more. Porsche leads Aston Martin, then McLaren, Audi, BMW, and Mercedes trying to squeeze its way through in the hands of Benji Hetherington, who makes contact with Dan Brown. Off goes car number 888, Dan Brown, and into the barriers as well. We look back at the replay and Benji Hetherington had got his nose up the inside. There was contact made between both of them. Benji Hetherington made secondary contact with the BMW, which pitched it off into the right. Dan Brown just makes the slightest of contacts with the barrier. He's able to recover the car though, and as he makes his way back onto the circuit, he will be, I suspect, more than disappointed with that. Nick Tandy, though, still continuing to charge car number 31. He's now starting to close in up onto the coattails of the McLaren ahead in the hands of Duncan Tappy, as all of a sudden Nick Tandy heads for the pit lanes. That's a bit of a surprise because Nick Tandy was absolutely charging. That therefore means that Johnny Adam now comes up into 5th place at the wheel of the Beechdene Aston Martin and is now Duncan Duncan Tappy. 6th place, there's also a good battle there. In 7th place goes number 25, Matt Bell, still chasing as hard as he possibly can the car ahead. Nick Tandy clambering out of the car, all clearly not well with the track speed Porsche. David Ashburn, his co-driver there. The mechanics also talking to him, and for Nick Tandy, clearly there's been a problem with the car. So he steps out of the car, and as the race continues on the circuit, it looks as though Glyn Geddy is coming under pressure from Matt Bell. The Audi trying to sneak its way through up the inside. He squeezes his way through, gains the place. Andy in the pit lane has found a very disappointed driver.
It all looked so good, and then it didn't. What happened?
I had slight contact with one of the cars. I can't even remember. It was such a fraught battle, but I was getting some water pressure warnings in the car for a little while, but it sometimes happens when you're going around a particular corner. But there must have been a little tiny hole, because about 5 laps later, then yeah, I think it's lost all its water and the engine's got too hot, so there's no way we could have finished the race. At least this way we can have another go this afternoon.
Huge disappointment for Nick Tandy, the 3rd non-finish on the trot for that team, and only 4 laps of the race to go. As Phil Keane still continues to lead the race. This is a fight for 2nd and 3rd place. Michael Caine still being hounded by the number 10 M Sport Audi R8 in the hands of Warren Hughes. Of course, Rempert Berg leading the race in the early stages at the wheel of that car that lies 3rd. And certainly for the M Sport team, one of their better performances of the season, because they're still hot on the heels of the champion from last year, Michael Caine. Round through Murray's he goes, as there's a big spin for number 69. That is Alex Osborne, former Clubman's racer, who again skitters the Ginetta G50 all over the grass, rejoins the circuit. As we ride back on board once more with Matt Bell, it's Johnny Adam at the wheel of the Beechstein Aston Martin that sits directly ahead. Not far ahead of him is the Von Ryan Racing McLaren in the hands of Duncan Tappy. 3 cars, not quite as one, turn their way out of Murray's, accelerate their way onto the Senna straight. And the Aston Martin should, in theory, have the legs in a straight line. You can just see away all of the time is Johnny Adam, and therefore frustration for Matt Bell, who should close up on the brakes. We're on to the last lap, though, as Phil Keane turns his way round through the sweeping left-hander at Agostini and heads up towards Hamilton for the final time, with Duncan Tappy in 4th position under a raft of pressure, not just from Johnny Adam at the wheel of the Beechstein Aston Martin, but also from Matt Bell, who we ride on board with once more. Matt Bell sitting there in 6th position, Johnny Adam in 5th place ahead. You can see that Duncan Tappy is not overly far ahead. 3 cars as one, all fighting for the last couple of places inside the top 6, turn their way onto the brakes and in towards Agostini for the final time, with Matt Bell briefly looking as though he wanted to go around the outside of Johnny Adam's Aston Martin. Out of Agostini they go, and as they turn their way up towards Hamilton, it looks as though Benji Hetherington also gaining a position there and goes ahead of the McLaren of Glyn Geddy. Onto the brakes comes Johnny Adam, round through Oggy's. Matt Bell again trying round the outside at Oggy's, gets good drive coming off the corner at the wheel of the Audi, but Johnny Adam is able to keep him at bay, and whilst they're squabbling, it's just allowed Duncan Tappy in 4th position to breathe a reasonable sigh of relief now. The race leader, though, through Corham for the final time, up towards the left-hander at Murray's, and accelerates his way towards the start-finish line. Phil Keane and John Minshaw look as though they are going to claim a victory here. Their first victory was at round 1 at Alton Park, and they head towards a checkered flag here at round 5 at Snetterton and claim the honours. The number 33 Porsche comes through and takes what was a very hard-fought win from Ahmed El Harthi and Michael Caine, who secure 2nd place. And the Audi of Rempert Berg and Warren Hughes sit there in 4th place. The rest of the field just filing their way through. Matt Bell still under pressure from the charging number 14, Benji Hetherington. It's been a busy race, hasn't it, for the Fortec Mercedes? And as they head over the start-finish line, the checkered flag flies for what has been here at Snetterton a very frantic first British GT race of the weekend. In the GT4 class, it looks as though the Optimum Motorsport Ginetta G50 of Ryan Ratcliffe and Rick Parfitt Jr. are going to claim their first-class victory of the season. So confirmation then that the GT4 class honours went the way of Rick Parfitt Jr. and Ryan Ratcliffe for the first time this season. 2nd overall in the race and their best result of the season for El Harthi and Caine. But it was Minshaw and Keane that took the win.
Congratulations, Phil. That was a classic, wasn't it?
Yeah, cheers. No, it was really good. John drove brilliantly. The team and Porsche done a great job with the car, so, you know, couldn't be happier, really. Just nice easy stroke to victory.
Unlike everyone behind you, which was incident-packed.
Yeah, it did seem that way, so no, but you know, the car ran faultlessly, so a lot of thanks to Track Speed and Porsche for getting all the bits to us, because obviously after Silverstone, you know, they had their work cut out, but no, it's been really good.
Phil did a great job in the car, but there's just no way I could hold him off. You know, it was just a complete pointless exercise. So, you know, as soon as I saw him behind us, it was a case of just let him go and maybe he'll have a problem. But no, it's a good result, and we'll see what the next race brings. You know, it's another fraught hour because it's a sprint race. You know, it's GT racing, but it is a sprint racing. It's flat on the boards for an hour and see where we come.
I thought as we dealt with traffic on the last lap, I thought I was going to get an opportunity at Coram on the last lap, but you know, he's been around a bit, so he made his car just wide enough to not leave a gap. So, but yeah, and then we've ended up with second. I think the lead car got a penalty for yellow flag infringement. So yeah, it's very strong. Another fantastic result for M Sport and myself and Rem as well.
However, after the celebrations were over, the winners were handed a 30-second penalty for overtaking under yellow flags early in the race, which promoted Aman El-Harthi and Michael Caine to victory. But it was a much clearer win in the GT4 class for Rick Parfitt Jr. and Ryan Ratcliffe, who took the top step.
And luck has not been on our side, and today we pulled it together, and yeah, I mean, Rick drove a fantastic first stint and handed the car over to me, and we just managed to maintain the gap and bring it home in first.
In race 2, it was the repaired Fiskin Porsche of Stephen Jell at the start. And as the field closed up into the first corner, it was Joe Osborne in the black BMW that claimed first place. Things didn't get any better for Phil Keane and John Minshaw. After losing the win in race 1, Phil hit the back of Michael Caine, bringing their race to an abrupt end. In the battle for the lead, Nick Tandy launched himself up the inside of Joe Osborne, sending Joe into a spin. However, Nick admitted it was his mistake, and in a great show of sportsmanship, he moved over to allow Joe back through. Before launching another, more successful attempt for the lead of the race. At the pit stops, David Ashburn got in and inherited the Porsche's advantage in the lead of the race. And there was plenty of drama in GT4 as well. A mystery fault in Ryan Ratcliffe's car brought it to a halt. However, it then fired back up again and he managed to keep going. GT4 Series leader Declan Jones became a victim of the different speeds in the classes after Rob Barth dived past trying to lap him. Declan luckily managed to carry on and hand over to Zoe Wenham despite some serious damage to the car. And with the mystery power issues seemingly resolved, Rick Parfitt Jr. set about carving up James May's advantage before eventually taking the GT4 class lead. But at the front of the whole field, it was win number 2 of the year for Nick Tandy and David Ashburn.
My alarm was coming up with the water pressure, thinking, here you go again, same thing. But actually it didn't. His temperature was fine. Then I noticed Tandy say, coming behind me. I got blocked by one of the back markers, but I found a few places that are quicker than him, so concentrated on that bit.
Result? Top step?
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I'm really emotional. Half of this is champagne and half tears. It's been great. The engine cut out mid stint and caused him to drop over 50 seconds back, and then we had a great pit stop. And I went out, and I think that's the drive of my life, I've got to be honest with you. It was just like every lap was a qualifying lap, and I was absolutely on the limit. And to come home in first, I mean, that's an earned victory and just brilliant.
So with 2 wins in GT4, it's Rick Parfitt Jr. and Ryan Ratcliffe that lead the championship. And in GT3, it's all closed up. David Ashburn and Nick Tandy now lead by just half a point from Mark Patterson and Matt Bell.
Well, we thought the epic endurance of Silverstone, that 3-hour special, was something to behold, but my word, we've just seen 2 incredible sprint races here at Snetterton. British GT just gets better and better, and they say the best is always yet to come. Well, what's next for us? Only Brands Hatch.